Good afternoon, everyone. We are here today for the regular meeting of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, Wednesday, February 19th, 2 o'clock. Stephanie?
Mayor Prusick,
I'm here.
Comptroller Green,
Here.
President Reed.
Here.
Great, thank you all. Items presented for the first time, number 1, 20.074, request from the Comptroller's Office for approval of contracts and leases for various city departments as listed on Exhibit A. 2, 20.075, request from the Comptroller's Office for approval of intra-departmental and interdepartmental transfers from various city departments as listed on Exhibit B. 3, 20.076, request from the Comptroller's Office for approval of transfers between projects for capital improvement funds listed on Exhibit C. Number 4, 20.077, request from the Comptroller's Office, Deputy Comptroller, Finance and Development for approval of the documents relating to the Cervantes Convention Center, including the resolution approving the financing agreement and supplemental lease agreement, intergovernmental cooperation and financing agreement, and first supplement to amend and restate Convention Center operating lease. Number 5, 20.078, request from the Deferred Compensation Board, 457 Board, for approval of the Empower Retirement System contract that allows for Empower to serve as the plan's administrator and record keeper. Number 6, 20.076, request from the Director of Streets for approval of Board Bill 141. This ordinance authorizes the supplemental appropriation of $250,000 for the City Tow Division for fleet purchases. Number 7, 20.080, request from the St. Louis Development Corporation for approval of the amended and restated parcel development agreement for HealthWorks Hospital project. This amendment requires the co-developer provide evidence of closing and all financing for road and infrastructure improvements by August 20th, 2020, and for expansion hospital facility by December 21st, 2021. This amendment further requires certificates of substantial completion for the road and infrastructure by September 30th, 2021, and the hospital facility by June 30th, 2023. Number 8, 20.081, request from the Mayor's Office for approval to pay an invoice in the amount of $28,864.70 to the Missouri Municipal League for FY20 annual membership dues from Fund 1010, Department 190, account 5648000. Number 9, 20.082, request from the Deputy Director of Public Safety for approval of Board Bill 186. This ordinance authorizes a $120,000 grant agreement with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, through the Missouri Department of Homeland Security, administered by and through East-West Gateway Council of Governments and the St. Louis Fire Department to fund the cybersecurity coordinator position. Excuse me. Number 10, 20.083, request from the Deputy Director of Public Safety for approval of contract authorized by Board Bill 186 with East-West Gateway Council of Governments to fund the cybersecurity coordinator position at the St. Louis Fusion Center. Number 11, 20.084, excuse me, I'm talking too much. Request submitted by the Office of President of Board of Aldermen for approval of Board Bill 207. This ordinance approves the expenditure of funds received by the St. Louis City Board of Election Commissioners from 2019-2020 election efficiency grant award by the Missouri Secretary of State. Last item, number 12, 20.085. Thank you. Request submitted by the Office of the President of the Board of Aldermen having been approved by the Airport Commission and the Comptroller for approval of Board Bill 188. This ordinance authorizes the transfer of up to $13,727,769 from the Debt Stabilization Fund to the Airport Revenue Fund to mitigate rates in FY20 in accordance with the 5-year airport use and lease agreement.
I'd like to make one amendment to the list. Item number 12, we've already adopted. It just didn't have the board bill number on the letter. So that's why. we've adopted it all. We just didn't have the board doing
So you wanna move to remove it?
it. Yeah, we can remove.
I second.
All in favor of removing item number 12?
Aye.
Aye.
I have one correction to the agenda as well, and it relates to item number 7, and it really is just a wording change to better explain item number 7. So I'm requesting a motion to amend item 7, 20.080, to appear upon the agenda and read as follows. Request from the St. Louis Development Corporation for approval of the amended and restated parcel development agreement for the HealthWorks Hospital project. The amendment requires that the co-developer provide SLDC with evidence that the co-developer has closed on all financing necessary to complete the road and infrastructure improvements and the hospital facility by August 20th, 2020, and a certificate of substantial completion by September 30th, 2021. In addition, in Section 4, subsection C, exclusions from TIF revenues, the TIF revenues shall not include any tax increment financing revenue generated from the Major League Soccer Stadium, sports complex, and practice fields situated on the 34.7 acre soccer stadium redevelopment area as described in the soccer stadium redevelopment plan. That's a clarification of that item.
It's just a clarification. It hasn't changed the item 7 materially.
I think that's correct. It's just a more complete explanation.
Okay. So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Abstain.
Okay. So now we have the corrected agenda before us.
I move that we adopt items number 1 through 11 as amended.
I would like to separate item 7.
Separate out
Okay.
7. So,
I also have questions on item 1.
Okay.
I move that we adopt items 2 through 6 and 8 through 11.
Second. All in favor of adopting 2 through 6 and 8 through 11?
Aye.
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 Okay. We're gonna have
Yes,
a
item.
motion on item number 1, and then we'll discuss
Yeah,
it?
I move that we adopt item number 1.
I'll second that. Is there discussion or questions?
I have 2 questions.
Okay.
The first question has to do with the special counsel request, and that's in, imagine on page 1 of the exhibit. There's a request from the city council for special counsel for EEOC MCHR. And I'd like to know the reason for the need for special counsel in this case.
That is a $5,000 item for Pitzer Snodgrass PC, am I correct?
Yes.
Is there anyone who can speak to that?
Deb, would you know anything about that?
I'm aware that we have the contract for special counsel. I do not know the basis.
There's no one to describe the need for the reason for the need.
Yeah, I don't have the details.
Let's look here. Is it,
It's not attached.
it's not attached. Okay, I am not aware of the details of that $5,000 transfer.
I'd suggest we could put it, we could hold this till next month, Mayor.
Yeah, hold just that $5,000 item, correct?
Item number 1, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
Is that acceptable with you, Madam Comptroller, that we would amend this to exclude item number 1, the $5,000 for Pitzer Snodgrass PC?
Let me say 001.
Oh, if you would like.
so I'll
Yeah,
restate my, I'll restate
Go And I also have another question for that same section, and it has to do with special counsel for Slate.
Yes.
There is a request to increase the amount of the contract by about 400%. But when you break it down by fiscal years, it's 200% increase per year from a 25,000 to a total of 100,000. So my question here has to do with a progress report of the scope of work. Has there been a progress report submitted?
Let me just give a little overview here. This is an attorney, Rochelle Daniels, who, as you know, we hired to assist, really to make sure that we're in compliance with the myriad of federal and state regulations having to do with Slate. And so what we've requested here is $50,000. We originally had a $25,000 contract. So we requested $50,000 in FY20 and $50,000 in FY21 to continue to assist us with that monitoring. This individual is a real expert in this, nationally known in this field, and we feel like, of course, there's a lot of money at stake at Slate, and we want to make sure that we're in compliance with every little detail of all of these federal and state laws.
So the reason for the increase has to do with what?
We've already utilized the original contract, and there was additional work, and there remains additional work. I will say that we have, with this individual's help and ongoing help, completed all the audits of Slate that began maybe a year ago. I would guess at this point in time. So this is ongoing specialty legal work.
So will there be an interim report describing the scope of work and the need for the increased amount per fiscal year?
We can certainly get that for you. We can have
Okay.
that. We can have that prepared. Maybe it would be a recap of what's been done so far and what is proposed to be done in the future. We can get that for you.
Thank you.
Sure.
And so that takes care of my questions for item 1.
Okay, so I would amend item, Madam Comptroller, are you, okay with item 38 stand, correct? I'll amend item 1. First withdraw my previous motion and offer up a new motion for item 1 to include from the Exhibit A list items 2 through 38.
Second. All in favor of
Item 1.
item number 1, items 2 through 38 on the attachment, on the exhibit?
Aye.
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 Okay. Thank you. Now we have item number 7.
Okay, I have a concern regarding the proposed amendment here. It appears that the amendment is...
Madam Comptroller, could
Yes.
we make a motion first and then
Yeah, we have.
go to discussion?
Yeah, we could.
Please do, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I move that we adopt item number 7 as amended.
Second. Now, discussion. Go ahead, please, Madam Comptroller.
Thank you. The amendment that's proposed before us today appears to be quite material regarding the current legislation that has been passed by the board. It's come before the Board of E&A in the executive branch where we do not make the law, and this substantial change or amendment appears to be quite material, and I wanted to bring that to the attention of the E&A Board. I have been contacted by members of the Board of Aldermen who object to the materiality of such a change being handled by the Board of E&A, or attempted to be handled by the Board of E&A, as they note that the legislative body is the only body that makes law. So that's my comments regarding the item 7.
Okay, maybe by way of a bit of background here, it is my understanding, and I'll let Deb Deuster speak to this specifically, it's my understanding that I'm going to use the word minor, not as a legal term, but minor changes to the amended and restated redevelopment agreement, parcel development agreement, can be made by the comptroller and the mayor with approval from the Board of E&A. And the nature, this board bill, when it came through the Board of Aldermen, passed 23-2, I believe was the vote, and that was in November. I don't recall the date. Do you know that? Okay. In about November. And when this board bill, when the amended and restated parcel development agreement came to my desk, it was on January 24th, and it had already had a date in it that, it was passed on October 18th, sorry, not November, October. Already had a date in it that had passed, which was December 31st of 2019. I wasn't interested in signing an agreement that already had a date in it that, would have had passed. So I suggested that if we were going to sign this, it should be, that date should be moved up, and I had suggested March 31st. And that was in order for the developer to have financing letters supporting the development of the project. When I understand when it was discussed with the developer, I didn't have that discussion personally, but when it was discussed with the developer, they suggested that rather than having a financing commitment, that they would actually have closed on the financing by August of 2020, August 20th of 2020. Further, they suggested that they were they did not need any TIF revenue that would result from the soccer stadium location. That was seen as a plus. So rather than having just obtained a commitment letter, they were now agreeing to have closed on the financing. And so that's also better than just having a commitment letter. So that's the reason for these changes, which we felt was actually better for the city. And so that's the reason that these changes are reflected in the document.
Madam Mayor, thank you for that explanation. The changes, in my view, appear to be material, as I stated earlier. However, I did hear you state that you thought that they were minor. However, I am advised by counsel that these material changes, which you just clarified as to what they are, I will also add that these changes move us into a new fiscal year, which would have begun July 1st, 2020. The changes that before us look at a closing in the month of August in 2020, which is also, in my opinion, a material has material effect on the item that's before us. And so therefore, I would be more comfortable approving this item if it was first amended in the Board of Aldermen, so that the original legislation would be amended to reflect what I believe is a material change.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm good with that. I guess one of the big changes is, and I guess this change I'm talking about was already, you've already met with the developers, talked to them about it.
I have not
Was
met
it-
with them, but
Somebody.
they suggested this, and it was,
Oh, they, so it's.
and it was better than what we had, is the way I saw it.
Okay, so the commitment letter, instead of having a commitment letter or a commitment to financing, they would actually have to close by that exact same date.
By August 20th, 2020, yes.
Yeah, that seems to have, but if indeed a discussion has been had with the developer and they're agreeing to that, but I have no idea why they would do that. Would Deborah know the answer to that?
You know,
Could we ask you?
I'm not familiar as to why, maybe the developer agreed to the changes other than as the
Did they
mayor-
request the changes or did we request?
I understand from SLDC that they were, agreeable to the changes. I'm not sure who initiated, the change, and of course,
Can we hear from SLDC?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Otis,
Yes, we did speak with the developer. They initially asked for a change. That we were talking of, for the reason the mayor indicated, the date had passed. And so we were in a spirit of cooperation with them, working with them to come up with terms that would be agreeable. And I guess I would ask Gilmore Bell, who was our attorney, to basically say what the legislation that was passed, what it really did say. And the fact that we think that there was latitude within the legislation to be able to do it. And it does not have any impact on the TIF bonds or the things that we will be moving forward with. And so I think that we're, so this is Mark Graham with Gilmore Bell.
Good afternoon. So as the mayor noted, the prior agreement required the developer to provide evidence of commitments to finance by December 31st. It typically takes approximately 6 months after commitments are in place to close a financing. And so by extending the date from December 31st to August 20th to close the financing does not materially change the date on which the financing otherwise would have been expected to close. Likewise, the extension of the date for completion from June 30th to September 30th is, in our opinion, an immaterial change that facilitates a very worthwhile project. And then, as the mayor noted, it will be a substantial revenue increase to the city to remove the MLS site from the TIF revenues that are captured for this project. So based on that and based on the language in the ordinance that specifically authorized the mayor and the comptroller to execute a PDA with the approval of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment. So this was contemplated by the original board bill. We felt that it was all consistent with that.
and it was my opinion that,
Mark Graham, G-R-I-M-M.
Okay.
it was my opinion that, since the Board of Aldermen passed this board bill 23-2, that it was, my responsibility to try to carry out the, what was written in that board bill. So I understand that you're looking at it a little differently, which is fine. I had understood that the comptroller was okay with this, or we could have talked about it more, but regardless, if you're opposed to this and want it to go back to the Board of Aldermen, that's what'll have to happen.
But, well,
Is that correct
well-
to Mark Grimm? Because it's the comptroller and the mayor that have to agree on the changes?
Well, the mayor and the comptroller are authorized to sign the agreement upon approval of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment.
I got it.
All right, so just so we're clear about what that means, right? So
Yeah.
if we're talking about amending this ordinance, and you know we're gonna be going down soon, right?
Couple of weeks, 3 weeks maybe.
Yeah, so we're looking at, you know, May. So
For
April, May,
introduction.
April, May, before we can
Introduce
possibly
it.
really not introduce, but just get it done, right? So what does that do to the project?
I don't know the answer to that.
Who would?
I don't know.
Sorry, what was your question?
So,
What would the delay?
so, yeah, if this is not adopted today, and the board has to introduce an ordinance to change the original ordinance, what does that do?
To the project, Joe Dooley, with Stone Layton, what that would do with the project is, it would delay the closing, because we can't, it's a two-step
so-
process,
and
yes.
Everything
So-
is on hold.
Yeah, so, I mean, it will, the hospital that the city desperately needs would be delayed. And I would concur with Mr. Grimm, and I believe that these are minor changes, in that there was not even a date in the original amendment, or in the original amended and restated parcel development agreement for a closing. So that's not a term that was even referenced in there. In addition to that, someone had a question whether or not it was, the developer came up with the exclusion of the MLS, and yes, we did as an effort to try to cooperate and show that there was no intent by the developer to interfere with anything going on at the soccer stadium. And we were focused on trying to get the hospital done. And our offer was contingent upon getting this so that we could get a signed PDA so that we could have the 6 months to get it closed.
And what's the city councilor saying about this? Has the city councilor said that?
Mr. President, we've advised the mayor and
So you have officially-
40A that these are within the scope of what
Okay.
the ordinance contemplated, because it said that the mayor and comptroller, after approval of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, could execute with such changes with no such further action of the Board of Aldermen necessary to authorize such changes, is pretty clear, and because it specifies that is to carry out the intent of the ordinance. This is not going outside of
The original intent.
of the structure of the
Okay.
agreement, and I just want to add that the agreement itself is not recited, it is an attachment to the ordinance. So it's, in terms of, infringing upon the Board of Aldermen, it really is not, especially with the clarification in section 3, where the Board of Aldermen specifically asked that the mayor and comptroller with the Board of Estimate and Apportionment handle it with no further action of the board. It's clear that the Board of Aldermen understood that this process would occur. And it's really not dissimilar to other large projects that we handle in this manner. We have the convention center also on the agenda, and ordinance 70883 likewise had this language for some of the changes that are in that agreement.
Is it appropriate for me to make follow-up comments?
I think so, sure.
Thank you. To be clear, I'm only stating that I am advised, as well as I do believe that the changes that are being made here, the amendment, in particular the substantial change regarding the MLS, which is favorable to the city, that should be reflected in an amendment to the ordinance, because as the attorney that spoke from Gilmore Bell just stated, it is a substantial change as well as a positive change for the city. It should be reflected as law. Therefore, it should go back to the Board of Aldermen so that they may make that change. I believe that the August 2020 date gives us ample time for the Board of Aldermen to consider and make that change. So that is why I am making the comment today. As I stated, I have been contacted by members of the board that agree that this is a change that's substantial enough, with strong support of the board, that they would like to see it as law. So I do not believe that it is a minor change, Madam Mayor, Mr. President. It therefore should go back to the Board of Aldermen for changing.
Madam Comptroller, has the bill sponsor, the original bill sponsor, has she contacted you and said that she would like, that she thought that the ordinance needed to be changed?
I have attorneys present at the current meeting in the room. I would like them to speak to that. Also, I would like to say that SLDC has been contacted on several occasions to further discuss the items. I am told by counsel, did not get back to the comptroller, counsel to discuss it. It should have been well known that for several weeks now that the comptroller was not comfortable with this item being approved at the E&A level. Should have, this amendment had several weeks to be introduced back in the Board of Aldermen. There was a failure of some sort to have it introduced there. I don't know why, but I think it's an important enough project that it should be amended at the legislative level so that this kind of substantial change would be law. So if there's an attorney there that will speak further.
Is there an attorney here who wants to speak for the comptroller? Tom or who?
Kelly Anderson in the comptroller's office. We disagree with that assessment. We do believe that it was a material change to the amendment, which would necessitate Board of Aldermen approval. I think, Tom Ray wants to jump in or.
Mr.
All I
Wright?
can say is historically, from the TIF agreements that I've seen in the last 15 years, when we make changes of this sort, the substantial completion dates, and change them by any date, we make that go back to the Board of Aldermen. Those are the type of bills that are always introduced. I see this type of change as like that and not an immaterial change.
We're in a situation, I guess, where we've got a lot of lawyers here, and some of them think it is, and some of them think it isn't. So, okay. President Reed, did you have a?
Can we ask if Dale has anything to add to this discussion? Do you have anything to add to this
Well,
discussion?
no, I mean, we obviously with the help of our attorneys concluded that this was not a material change, and particularly because the date had already passed by the time it was time to sign. It was really, it almost had to be changed to make any sense out of it. So,
Dale, can you tell us the history of these types of changes?
Well, this is a rather unique project, so
Because
I can't really compare it with other things that much. I would agree with Tom Ray that sometimes we do go back to the Board of Aldermen for certain changes in TIF project dates, but this is not quite the same as those changes, so it really is kind of standing on its own.
One more question for Otis. No, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Otis, again, can you state for us one more time why you believe that we have the authority to change it here? And also, I really need to understand if the primary bill sponsor is the one that has met with the comptroller. That's kind of an important piece because I know that we have some people that were at the Board of Aldermen that were fighting against the project, against the primary sponsor. And for me, if the primary sponsor does not have any problem with these changes, and the language within the bill gives us the flexibility to do this, you know, I would not be willing to send it back to the board just so that you know, a handful of naysayers can have another bite at the apple and try to discredit the sponsor, the primary sponsor, and anyone else associated to this project. We need healthcare services north of Delmar, right? And that's why this bill was introduced. That's why the primary sponsor pushed so hard to get it done. And
That's why the vote was 23-2.
At 23-2, and you know, and that's why, you know, those 2 or 3 aldermen from the south side that, for whatever reason, have no concept of the urgency of healthcare services north of Delmar. I'm not willing to buy into anything that they're planning to do here. I want to be absolutely clear about that. So if someone cannot tell me definitively that the primary sponsor has contacted them and said that it's a bad idea, I want to move this and pass it today.
Okay.
So to answer your question, for all the reasons that Mark Graham, who's our counsel, and I think Deb Brewster, who is the city's counsel, all have opined, I think that we feel comfortable from an SLDC perspective that this is a good change in the sense that it's within the scope of the ordinance that was passed. And so I think this is one of those that at the end of the day, it is good for the city in the sense that the changes that are being made also is impactful to the city in a positive way.
Yeah, I would say let's
Okay.
pass this.
So there's been a motion, a second, there's been a lot of discussion. Is there any more discussion? Okay. If there is no more discussion, all in favor of passing item number 7, say aye. Opposed,
Aye.
no. Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain? Okay. Okay, thank you. Item number 7 passes. There's one other item, President Reed, that you suggested for discussion.
It was the Safe Space program.
Uh-huh, yeah, we're familiar with that.
Safe Space after-school program. And I don't speak. Tell me.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
I'm sorry.
So the Safe Space After School Program is a program that is being led by the Missouri Faith Leadership Council and St. Louis University in cooperation with numerous nonprofits locally. It has support of the St. Louis public school system and various different stakeholders all across our city. It's currently in 4 schools, and the governor has committed $400,000 to it, so I really appreciate that. St. Louis Public Schools, they're offering up free space within the schools and security and things of that nature. It's in Sumner, Hickey, Clay, and Northwest. The city of St. Louis, what we are being asked to do is to do some additional matching funds up to $200,000. What that would allow us to do is to open up 4 additional sites. The after-school program offers a safe space for kids. It helps them with homework. It helps them with self-awareness, community involvement, and a whole host of character-building activities that they do within the program itself. I'm excited about it. Alderwoman Pam Boyd has been working just tirelessly on it. So what this is a request for for Paul to find $200,000 for it. But I do have a recommendation for it. In inmate meals, we're currently tracking somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 million under our budget amount, something like that.
And that seems like a high number, but
Okay.
I think in the mid report I said something like 700,000.
Okay. So we need 200 of that 700. That's one place.
So First of all, let me just say that I'm very much in support of this program. We've been in conversations with Alderman Boyd. Also, we've been in conversation with the governor's office and Reverend Darrell Gray, who's heading up the Missouri Faith Leadership Council here. And back in December, on December the 9th, I wrote a letter in support. At that time, it was $100,000, which is what we believe the match, the commitment was then, because we also think it's a good program. And so maybe I would suggest that can we come back to this with a definitive proposal?
Well, time is ticking. So here's what, if we can have the budget director to begin looking for the money, and then we take up any transfers or anything like that when
Next
we come
month.
back. Yeah, when we come back. But if we wait a month to ask them to begin looking at it, we'll be in the heat of summer, and the program will not be funded the way it needs to be funded.
That is fine. We'll ask the budget director to do that, and take into account some of the commitments that we've already supported here back in December, and that's good.
And
Okay.
budget director, I made a
Yeah.
recommendation for places you can
You
find
got it.
money already.
We'll take a look. I should point out, when we do the budget every year, we do have pots for specific programs that we identify. And so
Yeah.
Right, I mean, part of this was this was anticipated that it would be, 50,000 of it would come through Proposition S, which is completely under the control of the Board of Aldermen. And so, you know, this is my understanding. I don't know why it wouldn't have made it into Proposition S, but it didn't. So we'll have to try to
because
figure that out.
Because we had,
Lots of needs.
like 5 times
I got
the
it.
needs as much.
I understand that.
And if we're sitting here and we have, even if it's $750,000 sitting around from inmate meals, what better use for it than
Yep.
to do an after-school
All right.
program to help youth?
Yeah.
So I think it's.
We're all in support of
Okay.
after-school activities for young people. So, okay, the budget director's gonna look at it and we'll take it up next month. Is there any other business, new business, other business?
Before we get to other business, I would like to ask the budget director, as he looks for the funding for this program, to also keep in mind that the program is an after-school program to support our young people. And if he could look at placing it permanently in the budget as we come up in the next couple of months to deliberate the budget. Because I do believe that this kind of a space should not just be a pilot program, but should go into permanent existence from year after year.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Comptroller. I completely agree.
Okay,
Yeah, I move that we adjourn this.
second.
Madam Chairman, may I speak to the ESW?
Yeah, this,
Questions that I have?
you know, we don't really have the opportunity for sort of public discussion here, I don't think, if somebody,
No,
we
you
don't.
don't, but you
So
can
this
talk.
meeting will have to adjourn because we can only take up the items that are on the agenda and that are posted 24 hours in advance, et cetera. So, okay. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Aye.
Thank you, Madam Comptroller.
Thank you.